Everybody, you're in for a treat today. Welcome to the Trust Me, I'm a Lawyer podcast. Our guest today is the one and only Salvatore J. Sicuso. I have had the privilege of knowing this gentleman since 1984 when we both walked into the freshman dorms at the University of Miami. And for the last, 35, 40 years, I've had a wonderful time being his friend and also being a lawyer who works very closely with him because Sal has turned out to be one of the most well-respected workers' compensation attorneys in the country. He is an advocate for the injured worker, and it is my great pleasure to welcome him to the podcast. Salvatore, how are you, buddy?
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you. I'm great.
Sal, I see that you have your office background in the background, but I hope you're in some safe bunker somewhere away from all this craziness that's happening in our world.
I am. I've been remoting now for months, and I just felt like I wanted to get back to the office for a minute, so I just pulled up a picture.
Well, Sal, a lot of people have been waiting for this podcast because they know we're friends and they know we work closely with each other. What advice can you give to workers right now who are being asked to return to work? I saw today, for instance, that Equinox is reopening and massage parlors and restaurants and bars, everything is like back to business. What happens to employees now who may be unnecessarily exposed to the coronavirus and get sick?
Well, Spencer, I had a feeling you were going to ask me that because it weighs on my mind a lot. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I think one of the worst parts of the entire statute in Florida, that is the statute that protects employers from subjecting their employees to either a certain injury or certain death. And it's very interesting, and it's an awfully part of the law. And basically the way it's stated is that if an employer hides a dangerous condition from you, then you can sue them outside of workers' compensation and personal injury, as you know, because we've done it together, actually,
Yes,
cases just like that. But if everyone knows about the dangerous condition going in, then the employer is still immune from tort cases. And that means you cannot sue them in circuit court for personal injuries, for pain and suffering and all the other things that you can get from a jury rather than under the workers' compensation system. So the worker's left with a Hobson's choice. Do I go in and subject myself to this, or do I say no and lose my job? And it is the most troubling part of the law for me, one of two, that is the death statute as well. And it's the one that I write about and complain about the most.
So maybe one of the few good things that can come out of this virus is a change in the law.
I think that would be a fabulous idea. The legislature will be back in session before we know it. And Florida it's a statutory construction. And I would say that it definitely should be something that is addressed. And if they want to address workers' compensation, that's one of the things that they're going to have to do. Yeah,
you need to go to Tallahassee and testify in front of a subcommittee or something and be the voice for the people who you have represented for, nearly 30 years and try to get some protection for them during this difficult time.
Well, it's going to be a difficult situation because everybody wants to get back to work, but can we do so safely? Yeah. And the number one thing is safety. We all know that's the number one thing that we all strive for in the workplace.
So in terms of litigation on comp cases, what's going on in the court system? How are those cases progressing, if at all, during this virus?
Well, interestingly, our workers' compensation court, if you can call it that, I know that some people don't prefer to call it that, but where we have workers' compensation claims adjudicated, they have been open for business. They have been open virtually. We've been doing telephonic mediations, telephonic hearings. I know that people are having Zoom trials. I haven't had one yet. So we are continuing to function, and that's very, very important for the injured worker. It's important for employers and carriers to have some certainty over what their rights and obligations are. And I really think that our particular judiciary and our workers' compensation system has functioned exceptionally well throughout this.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. In terms of caseload, have you seen any changes in caseload during the pandemic?
I know that a lot of people are experiencing that. Certainly, we represent workers, and if work isn't being done, it's difficult to have cases come up. But we have been brisk, and the phones have been ringing, and we are representing people.
Well, I saw the May job employment reports came out, and that employment was actually up in May, which I found almost impossible to believe.
You will also find that there was a glitch in the reporting.
Ah,
So the numbers aren't quite as rosy as they say. Unemployment is more like 16%, I'm told, and I've read, rather than about the 13% that they're reporting.
so tell us a little bit about your practice, Sal. I focused initially on your representation of injured workers. What else do you do?
Well, I started out 30 years ago in workers' comp in law school. I answered a blind listing, and I've been doing workers' comp ever since. I've been board certified since 2000, and that is certainly the main focus of my practice. But together with that, employment-related issues come up and have come up, and personal injury issues come up and have come up, and we've done so together. We've worked those cases together. And my practice initially for 15 years was straight defense. I had the corner office and the golden handcuffs of workers' compensation defense, equity partner in a statewide firm. And then I decided to switch sides. And that was 15 years ago, last February. And I still represent a small number of uninsured employers. And I do work for employers that need a voice
Right.
with their carrier. And they need help navigating the system with their carrier because they don't know what's going on, and they're not really being told what's going on. And they have to understand that some of the moves that workers' compensation carriers are making are subjecting them to other liability, like civil liability. And unless you understand the interrelationship between workers' comp law, employment law, and personal injury, then you're really not going to get that. So I offer that as a service as well, kind of a consigliere.
Well, that's for sure. And one of the questions that we were sent in earlier from a Scott Kotler was, what are your recommendations for undocumented workers who get injured?
Well, undocumented workers have all the rights that documented workers do to a large extent. The most important thing about if you're an undocumented worker is whether you did so, you engaged in this employment surreptitiously. You falsified documents in order to get the job. And that is not going to be okay in workers' compensation. But in large part, the undocumented worker is a function of certain employers. They do so willingly. They take in undocumented workers willingly. They gain the benefits of having an undocumented worker. And if the employer acquiesces in such employment, then they get those coverages. So the number one thing that I would say to an undocumented worker that is injured is assert your rights, and then get your treatment and get your benefits. You are allowed to get benefits. Just do not ever be untruthful about your status or anything in workers' compensation, because that is the number one killer to a case. And also, it's not fair and it's not right. You have to tell the truth.
Yeah, but maybe they're concerned that if they disclose their undocumented status, that they may end up not only just losing their job, but losing their ability to stay in this country.
I know that can be a concern, but they have all of the rights afforded to them that documented workers have, and there are protections against retaliation for filing workers' compensation cases. There is 440-205, which is a retaliation statute, and you can go right into circuit court and have another lawsuit if someone takes any adverse action against you for asserting your workers' compensation rights.
Which is why it's so important that injured workers and owners of small businesses that have an injured worker consult with an experienced workers' comp attorney like Sal Sacuzzo as soon as possible. Sal, what's the best way for people to reach you and to get your help?
I would say I'm very accessible. Normally, I'm in the office and I'm very accessible that way. I'm going to give my office number. That's 305-529-2355. We are still answering that call, obviously. A great way to contact me is Sal, S-A-L, at worklaw.org, worklaw.org. You can also get me at sicusolaw.com, SICUSOLAW.com.
Fantastic, man. I just want to thank you, Sal, for being a great friend of mine, for being a wonderful lawyer to co-counsel with, and for being on our show here today. Sal Sacuzzo, thanks so much. Stay safe, my friend.
Spencer, I want to thank you for having me, and thank you for your friendship and your support and your teamwork over these years. We will continue to keep fighting the good fight.
You got it, buddy. Be well. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.